Believe it or not, it's our responsibility to provide our next generation with the guidance, the fortitude, the strength, the community, and knowledge that they need to succeed.
We gotta cancel culture, change the way our kids are thinking. Think about the pain and anguish. We can save next generation. Break the cycle, no administration. Replacing anger with contemplation. Gotta teach them how to use their minds. Remind our kids they born divine. With a right to be, with a right to live, with a right to be exactly who they is. Cause eventually you'll be writing them in a prison cell while you're wiping tears.
I know, cause that was me.
Just ask my mama. I'm sorry for the things I did when I was young. I know no better. On second thought, I knew a lot. In retrospect.
All right, check it out. We are back. Another episode, another chapter, a blueprint for parents, breaking cycles by yours truly. So this chapter is going to be 6, understanding how your boundaries build bridges. Understanding, practicing, and enforcing healthy boundaries. All right, we are dangerous when we are not conscious of our responsibility for how we behave, think, and feel. That's Marshall B. Rosenberg who said that. So why this lesson matters? Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to safety. In parenting and relationships, boundaries can set the tone for how you expect to be treated, create structure and predictability for your children, teach others what is and isn't okay with you, allow you to protect your peace without guilt. The biggest myth about boundaries, that other people are supposed to respect them automatically. Boundaries are your responsibility, yours, to set, communicate, and enforce. So some evidence-based insight into that. Research from the University of California and the Gottman Institute shows clear, consistent boundaries reduce parent-child conflict over time. Children in boundary-consistent homes report higher emotional safety. Inconsistent or guilt-based parenting leads to resentment, confusion, and poor emotional regulation. Now, Marshall B. Rosenberg's view on boundaries, as a founder of Nonviolent Communication, NVC, Rosenberg emphasizes the importance of expressing needs without blame, using boundaries as a way to honor self and others, taking full responsibility for your own choices. Don't do anything that isn't play, Rosenberg, meaning don't act out of guilt, obligation, or fear of others' feelings. So some key principles: boundaries are about you, not them. They're what you will do if a line is crossed, not what they must do. Consistency over intensity. It's better to calmly hold a boundary every time than to explode after letting it slide 10 times. Boundaries with kids teach emotional safety. When kids know the limits, they feel less anxiety. So let's go through some of these practice scenarios, right? So your child's talking back repeatedly. A weak boundary is, you better stop or else, ... A healthy boundary is, if you continue yelling, I will take space until we're both calm. Now, obviously, you're going to say this in various different ways, but the point is, one time, a concise boundary spoken, and then if they push that boundary, immediate follow through. That's the healthy boundary. If you keep doing the thing, I'm going to do this, and then make sure you do that, right? So scenario 2, now this could be your partner, your spouse, friend, coworker, interrupts you while parenting. A weak response is, why do you always do that, right? And you're doing this in front of the kids, etc., etc. Now, a healthy boundary would look something like, I need to finish what I'm saying to our child before we switch voices. Please wait. Or something like that. Something that resonates more with your vernacular and communication styles. Like, when we go through workbooks, and we read these things, it's the formula, not the precise wording, because you're going to say things how you say them, but your delivery also matters. So let's go back and remember the 7-38-55 rule, right? Body language is 55% of how we receive communication. Tonality is 38, and words are just 7. So be really mindful about your body language, your posture, your tonality, and then the words you choose should not be conflicting or, confrontational. Scenario 3, a teen pushes bedtime limits every night. And it's not just teens that do this, right? So, okay, just 10 minutes more is the weak boundary. Strong is the boundary is 9:30. After that, your phone is done for the night. Period. No ifs, ands, buts. It's not about anything else. There's no back and forth. This is what it is. Execute, right? Guilt-based parenting is the next scenario. Your inner voice is, I was gone so long, so I can't say no. And this is speaking to the post-reunification aspects of my workbook, because I do emphasize post-reunification. One thing I noticed in my field of work was people going through the family court systems, navigating that particular journey, will often get told they have to do these parenting classes, anger management classes, whatever that looks like for them. And then what ends up happening is they do it during survival mode, right? Someone snatches your heart away. I know a lot of parents, especially a lot of dads I'm friends with, they refer to their kids as their heartbeats, right? And so you take someone's heartbeat away, they're in survival mode, right? They're trying to do everything in their power to get that back. So the things that they're learning, the classes that courts are saying you have to take, that's in survival mode. Your brain isn't necessarily operating at full capacity to retain information. If your prefrontal cortex, the logical thinking part of your brain, is not engaged because the amygdala is in the driver's seat, you're in survival mode, you're panicking, they've taken something from you. And so, I like to focus on after you get back reunited with your kids. These are some of the tools that you're going to be thinking about. So going back to that particular scenario, guilt-based parenting, right? Don't hold yourself so accountable that the boundaries for your children are super loose because you just got them back and you're just more concerned with that relationship. You were their parent the whole time. So yeah, inner voice is like, I was gone so long, I can't say no. Reframe is, I love you enough to give you structure, right? And part of that becomes, yeah, I know I was gone. I get it. Acknowledge it. Validate their feelings. Your kids are going to be pissed off. They're going to have emotional ups and downs and dysregulation. And as parents whose kids have ever been, whether they're with family members, friends, or foster care, there's going to be a lot of unpacking that they need to do. And you're the cause of it, right? Like, let's be real. So owning that, being accountable, and then being like, okay, that was then, this is now, right? We're moving forward. Sorry for all that. I'm not going to diminish your feelings about it. We can talk about it and move forward. So there's some boundary practice journal prompts in this chapter. Number 1 is, where in my life do I feel my limits are not respected, right? Is that work, home, the teenager, but maybe not the youth? Like, you have multiple kids, your partner, friends, right? If you have a boundary to text or call before anyone ever comes to your residence, when people show up, they're testing the limits of your boundary. How are you, in a strength-based way, allowing that information about your boundary to be continuously established? Because it's not their responsibility to enforce your boundary, but it is their responsibility to respect it. And if they refuse, then what's your choice after that? Number 2 is, have I clearly communicated those limits or assumed others should know, right? And we hear that a lot with our relationships. We make assumptions. We just assume that, oh, they've known me 10 years, that they know what I like or don't like, and they shouldn't have did that. They know better. I challenge you to ask, right? Hey, do you remember when I said, whatever about myself? Yeah, I really need this to be, use those I statements. Make it about you, because it is about you. Your boundaries are about you. And they're also about your safety, your peace, setting them in a way that creates safety and connection and collaboration within your immediate circle, your unit. 3, when I don't enforce my boundaries, how do I feel afterward? This is a really deep point of reflection, so that if you're able to recognize feelings that are negative, right? Feelings that minus the quality of your life and things that you haven't done, then how can you fix those? How can you alter? How can you pivot? So 4 is, how can I express my needs calmly and without blame? I hate it when you A, B, C, or D, right? Instead of saying, hey, I really need and I really appreciate when I'm respected in this way, or I really like it when, or, you make it about you and calm. Try not to enforce a boundary in the heat of the boundary being broken. Maybe come back later when temperatures are cooler and you're able to say, hey, just FYI, I didn't want to bring it up during the incident because, I didn't want to create conflict, but can we talk about something, right? Preface any conversation that might feel uncomfortable by orienting the person you're about to have the conversation with. Ask them if it's okay if you can talk about something, that's uncomfortable. 5 is, what's one small boundary I can commit to today with consistency? So give yourself something, some low-hanging fruit. Give yourself something that you can just grab onto, make the agreement to uphold, even if it's really small, even if it's internally just a boundary you can create for yourself, something that you won't do or something that you will do. And then so here's a activity. This is a write your boundary script, right? Complete this sentence. When blank, I will blank to protect my peace and my parenting. Example. When my child screams, I will take 3 deep breaths before responding. Then calmly set a limit. Final thought about this particular chapter is, every time you set a boundary, you are teaching your child what love feels like when it's not afraid. Boundaries build bridges. And this is a worksheet in the back of this chapter, reflection about your boundaries in action. Where in my life do I feel my limits are not respected? Have I clearly communicated those limits or assumed others should know? There's a little bit more room to work, but don't forget, there's always more room in the companion journal, 150 pages of alignments with date and lesson at the top, so that if you're doing this for court order or DLC or family reunification purposes, there's really an easy way to keep track of the exercises you've done, get them signed off on, what have you. So again, continue the worksheet. You're going to do the work. If this was a one-on-one session, we would kind of walk through it together. This is meant as a guide. Again, I'm not a therapist, right? Some of these things might allow you to realize that your check engine light is on, right? But I'm not the mechanic. I might be able to say like, hey, you should take that to a mechanic, but I know some basics. I am, certified training, parent training specialist, positive Indian parenting. I'm a father of 7, a grandfather of 4. I've been doing this a long time, but I've also taken initiative to consistently read and look and research different styles and modalities of parenting, styles, communication styles, all those different things, because I really, really am focused on breaking the cycles, breaking the narratives that have trapped us, that have stigmatized us, that make it hard for families to thrive. That's what this is about. There's an optional role play practice here. Imagine a real life situation with your child or partner where you need to hold a boundary. Write out your boundary statement and what action you will take if it is crossed. And I think that's really important when it comes to boundaries, right? Is what are you willing to do when the boundary is not honored, right? So you have to, it's kind of like advocacy, right? You have to be willing to accept the yes and the no. So you got this plan, you're like, all right, if this happens, I'm going to do this. But what are your contingencies? What if that kid doesn't react to you taking 3 deep breaths and then calmly saying, you need to do the thing as, we previously discussed. This is what it is. I'm taking your phone now. What if when they take the phone, or what if when you take the phone, they freak out? Pure meltdown, right? What is your next step in that boundary process? These are the things that I feel like require more intentional internal dialogue so that you can be prepared. Something I call watch the movie, right? If you're role playing, it doesn't mean you have to be sitting across from somebody assigning identities to each other or roles and then acting them out. Role play is no different than what they call visualization, right? If I sit here and think, okay, this is really bothering me. My kid's pushing my buttons. So now I have these different scenarios, these different tools that I can use. And for each tool, I just watch that movie through, right? And I try to think in like, worst case scenario, what if my daughter freaks out, throws something at me, curses me out, all the things. What does that movie look like on my end? How do I respond? How do I create safety for myself? How do I create a positive parenting experience for my daughter, who's obviously emotionally dysregulated if they're doing all this because maybe it wasn't the boundary itself that they're rebelling against, but the enforcing of the boundary, like the taking of the phone, and creates this other dysregulated response. And sometimes that can lead to a cycle of shame, guilt, right? You go back and forth with your child, but then you regret it. In that case, we go back to an earlier chapter where we talk about reparation, right? If you do something you regret as a parent, in the course of setting boundaries and them not being met or any other thing, be willing to, at the earliest, like I wouldn't go longer than 24 hours, repair that which you regret, right? If you said the thing, if you said the cuss word, if you did the name calling, if you whatever, pushed, hit, like, I don't know, I'm not a parent that uses corporal punishment. I don't hit my kids. But if you do, and one thing I would say to you about that is, what is your expected outcome, or what is your intended outcome? If you're striking a child, is it to instill a particular lesson, or is it out of anger? Because if it's out of anger, I'm going to tell you right now, the lesson that you're teaching them is might is right. You're basically telling your kid if they can physically dominate someone, then they can set the rules. That's what hitting your kid out of anger teaches them. Temporarily, it might get them to stop doing the thing, but you've planted a seed of resentment, anger, distrust, and you've also created a space where how can someone feel safe with someone who's willing to physically harm them, who is supposed to keep them safe and from physical harm? And to the best of our abilities as parents, we want to protect our kids emotionally too, right? So just remember, like, I'm not going to sit here and shame anyone that spanks their kids or whatever, but at least ask yourself why. What exactly are you trying to teach with that particular modality of parenting, right? And make sure it's for good reasons. At the very least, make sure you're spanking, or however, if you're going to do it, right? My strong opinion and suggestive coaching says, ask yourself, are you doing it out of anger? Or is it a strategic disciplinary tool that you're using to teach a very specific lesson? So you're seeking a specific outcome, and you're going to strategically raise your voice or strategically yell at this time to emphasize maybe the seriousness of the thing. But if you're just getting upset because you're emotionally dysregulated and you're hitting that kid, that's assault. You're just hitting someone out of anger, and then you're teaching that kid that that's okay. So when they go to school and someone makes them angry, they're going to hit them, right? Because that's what you're showing them. That's 55% of communication is body language. 38% is tonality. So if your words are saying, hey, you don't do this thing, and they're also saying, you don't hit people, and then your kid says, but you do, and then you get mad and hit them. You didn't teach them not to hit people. You taught them that if you're bigger, stronger, and mad about something, that it's okay to hit people, right? So that's just my piece on that. Again, last little take is set boundaries for yourself. Honor them. Your responsibility to uphold your boundaries. If you build a house and you build a fence around your house, it's not your neighbor's job to maintain the structure. It's not your friends or your brothers or someone who comes and visits often to make sure that your fence is keeping the things out that you don't want coming in. It's your job. If there's a hole in your fence, you go fix it, right? If someone keeps jumping your fence, it's your job to tell them to stop, right? So boundaries are incontrovertibly our responsibility and only our responsibility. And then you have to decide what you're going to do when people refuse to honor your boundaries. Are you going to cut ties? Are you going to continue to establish them, or are you going to create an action that is a response to your boundary being broken that you're going to be consistent about? And if that means like, hey, I'm just not going to talk to this person, or if this person shows up unannounced, even if I know they can see that I'm here, for example, both my cars are in the driveway, they can see me walking, I'm not going to open the door because you violated a boundary. And if I open the door, then you're like, all right, well, as long as I pull up, it's good. No, the boundary is call or text before you come over, unless it's an emergency or you're like, immediate family or whatever. And this isn't my personal boundary anyway. I'm just saying, if this was your boundary, then you have to be willing to look through the peephole or look through your Ring cam and be like, no, not answering the door. I don't have a text. I didn't get a call. They'll figure it out. That's what I mean by honoring the yes and the no's of people willing to accept your boundary, willing to protect your peace alongside you. But ultimately, it's your responsibility. You protect your peace. And by doing so, you pass down that knowledge to your children. You show them by modeling what setting good boundaries looks like by doing it. And when you do it and you model it, they know what it looks like. You might not see it in your 11-year-old when they're 11, but maybe when they're 18, maybe when they're 20. That's the beautiful thing about parenting is it shows up later. We're planting seeds. Hopefully those seeds are trees or plants that will be rooted in positive things. And ideally our kids take all the best attributes from us, add them to theirs, and become even better people than we were, right? Isn't that the hope, the dream, is that you have kids and they get older and they are more successful, more well-rounded. They learn emotional intelligence earlier than you did. Like, you want them to be better than you. Every generation is better than the last. Then we just evolve, right? The pursuit of internal evolution is also, part of my branding. Becoming the best versions of ourselves so that we can be the best versions as a parent, as a partner, as a sibling, as a friend, whatever that looks like. And a big foundational part of that is knowing how to set boundaries, knowing how and when to enforce boundaries, and knowing what to do when someone chooses to disrespect your boundaries. Making sure you stand on business, stand on your side of what it means or what you have said will happen if said boundary is not honored, right? All right, with that being said, this has been another chapter of A Blueprint for Parents, Breaking Cycles. We are what we agree to.